We've probably all played the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, but just for the uninitiated, the game basically consists of trying to track an actor based on their film appearances to Kevin Bacon in as few steps as possible. For example, here's Jaleel White from the 90s sitcom Family Matters. It wouldn't seem like he has any connection to Kevin Bacon. However, he did star in the film Big Fat Liar with fellow child actor Frankie Muniz. Frankie Muniz starred in the film My Dog Skip with Kevin Bacon. This would give Frankie Muniz a Kevin Bacon score of 1, and Jaleel White a Bacon score of 2. This can work with almost any actor you can think of, no matter how minor they are. And in fact, it doesn't only pertain to Hollywood actors. Here's the actor Irfan Khan from India. He can also be tracked to Kevin Bacon in 2 steps. It works with actors who have already passed away, for example, the silent film actor Buster Keaton, also 2 steps. The mathematics behind this is something called field of network theory, and it's actually pretty interesting. A lot of it is based on some ideas that were proposed by the Hungarian writer Frigyes Karinthy, who's not actually even a mathematician. In one of his essays titled Chains, he wrote about something called the shrinking world theory. According to the shrinking world theory, social distance is a logarithmic function to the size of the population. Let me say that in more plain English. As the population of a given society increases, so does the density of social networks. What that means is, the more people that you have, the higher chance that you have of being connected to any single person. Let me give you an example. Let's imagine that we have a social network of only 2 people, just me and you. In this case, I either know you or I don't. That's only one possible connection. However, if we expand our social network by inviting 1 friend each, now there's 4 people. Even if I don't know you, there's the chance that I know somebody who does know you, or that you know somebody who knows me. The more nodes that we add to this diagram, the more complicated this social network becomes, until finally, it becomes actually improbable that we don't have a connection to each other. This is what people are talking about in the news when they say clusters, because this is what we use to track infectious diseases. It's also used for analyzing traffic patterns, for planning better city structures. It's useful for a variety of things. But before I get too carried away with this, let's get back to Kevin Bacon for a minute. If Kevin Bacon is jokingly referred to as the center of Hollywood, then the center of academia has to be the Hungarian mathematician Paul Erdős. Not only because of how prolific he is, but because of how many people he collaborated with throughout his lifetime. He believed that mathematics was principally a social activity, and he would famously show up at the doors of other mathematicians, sometimes unannounced, and simply say, "My brain is open." Then he would take out an open mathematical problem that had been stumping mathematicians for decades or even centuries, and through a combination of caffeine and sometimes Ritalin and Benzedrine, he would stay at that problem until he cracked it. Once the problem was solved, he would say, "Another roof, another proof," then pack up his things and move on to the next place. This was possible because he could fit almost everything he owned into a single bag. He never got married and he never had kids. In fact, he often called kids epsilon. In mathematics, epsilon means small and trivial. Through this hyper-focus on mathematics alone, he was able to publish an impressive 1,500 academic papers in his life. Nobody's ever beat that. And he collaborated with more than 500 people. This is why we have something called the Erds number. Just like 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon, we can track an academic's proximity to Paul Erdős. Giving him a score of 0, that means anybody who co-authored a paper with him would have a score of 1, and anybody who wrote a paper with any of them would have a score of 2, and so on. Now, unless you're an academic, you probably wouldn't recognize any of the names of people with a score of 1. But that number 2 category is expansive, and it includes people like Albert Einstein. If you back it up a bit further, you can find people like Bill Gates with an Erds score of 4. Or German Chancellor Angela Merkel with a score of 5. By the way, Merkel's academic acumen is even more impressive than her political resume. So now that we've established that Paul Erdős is essentially the academic equivalent of Kevin Bacon, what about people who are connected to both? There's actually something called the Bacon-Erdős number. This includes any person with both an on-screen link to Kevin Bacon and an academic connection to Paul Erdős. And there's actually way more than you might think. Let's have a look at the science side first. Now here are 3 of my very favorite people of all time. Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History of Time, made me realize that science doesn't have to be boring. It can be fun and exciting. Carl Sagan's book, A Pale Blue Dot, made me realize that science can be beautiful. In fact, that book brought a tear to my eye more than once. And Richard Feynman's autobiography, Surely You Must Be Joking, Mr. Feynman, it changed the way that I live my life and the way that I parent my children. So let's look at their Erdős-Bacon score then. Stephen Hawking has an Erdős number of 4 and a Bacon number of 2. That means that his on-screen connection to Kevin Bacon is actually closer than his academic connection to Paul Erdős. That's because Stephen Hawking starred in the film Monty Python Live next to John Cleese. John Cleese starred in the movie The Big Picture with Kevin Bacon. Carl Sagan is a TV personality, so you might expect his Bacon number to be low. Not surprisingly, he has the same score as Stephen Hawking. You might expect Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, to have a lower Erdős number, and he does, but he also has a higher Bacon number, giving him the same combined score of 6. Now let's go and see how Hollywood fares. The first thing you'll notice here is that there's a lot more women, and these are really impressive women. First we have Mayim Bialik. A lot of people recognize her from the show The Big Bang Theory, but for me, it's gotta be the show Blossom. I know some people probably were Six fans, but I was way more of a Blossom fan. Besides those giant hats, she also has a PhD in neuroscience and a combined Erdős-Bacon score of 7. Natalie Portman has written papers on subjects that I can't even pronounce. For example, she wrote a paper about frontal lobe activation using near-infrared spectroscopy. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. She also wrote papers about acquired central disk chromatopia and combinatorial applications of Hermite polynomials. I'm almost sure I said that one wrong. She also has an Erdős-Bacon score of 7. Then there's Danica McKellar, who played Winnie Cooper on the show The Wonder Years. She also wrote papers about percolation and the Gibbs state multiplicity for ferromagnetic Ashkin-Teller models. If you can understand those things, then these videos are way below you. She also has a combined Erdős-Bacon score of 6. That puts her in the same category as Carl Sagan and Stephen Hawking. I want to make it really clear here that I didn't use these childhood photographs in any way to diminish these women's accomplishments or their careers. I did it merely to point out that 1990s TV and film actresses were amazing. While we were being led to believe that Doogie Howser and Steve Urkel were geniuses, we had some actual certified geniuses there on set. I mean, we could also throw Kristen Stewart into this mix, because she has an Erdős-Bacon score of 7, after writing a paper about artificial intelligence. So you might be asking, who has the lowest Erdős-Bacon number? Is it a Hollywood star, or is it somebody who made their fame in science? Well, surprisingly, it is a Hollywood star. Albert Chan has an Erdős-Bacon number of 5. He starred in the film Patriots Day, directly with Kevin Bacon, giving him a Bacon number of 1. But he also wrote a peer-reviewed article on orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. That's the technology behind things like wireless LAN and 4G networks. Albert Chan is the most bona fide person with a score of 5, although there are others. Now, some people have taken this challenge even further to create something called the Bacon-Erdős Sabbath Challenge. That's somebody who has an on-screen link to Kevin Bacon, an academic link to Paul Erdős, and a musical link to the band Black Sabbath. This list includes all 3 of the women that we talked about before, and also the astronaut Buzz Aldrin. It's almost as exclusive as the EGOTs, those rare few who have won an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. But that's for another video.